and then everything lit. And I'm like running around, I'm like, I don't want to use the fire extinguisher, but I guess I have to. We're thinking cars we all love from when we're kids. You know, we love Back to the Future, DeLorean. I mean, we grew up with these things. You know, Dukes of Hazzard, General Lee. I mean, a Dodge Charger's not that great a car anyway, but somehow sliding sideways through the dirt is amazing. And then you think of superheroes and crime fighters and all those sorts of things that go, and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if I had a certain car by a billionaire vigilante that had an affinity for bats? It's not cool enough just to have a car that looks like it. Mine actually has to be turbine powered and have machine guns. So I started looking on eBay. There's this turbo shaft engine from like a drone anti-submarine helicopter that like back in the 70s would drop torpedoes, and I'm like, perfect. The output shaft is 0 to 6,000 RPMs, just like a normal car engine. It doesn't make stupid horsepower. I can do this. I call this guy, make a deal on it. He's gonna drive it from the East Coast, this jet engine. He comes in the middle of the night to my condo. I'm like in my late 20s, and there's some random guy delivering this weird looking piece of machinery in the middle of the night, and I'm paying him cash for it. But I'm thankful that nobody decided to be too nosy. Bought this thing, got the military manual, started going through it, started building the car, had the chassis. I took a C4 Corvette because they were cheap. And I could use all the independent suspension, and I had a title, and I could register it as like a modified vehicle. And then I basically just made my own you know, tubular space frame and everything with that, use the suspension. I could get a lot of things that work and just go from there. Time's another thing. It took me like 5 months to do, but I only had like 35 grand in it. How I had space to do it at this time in my career was, there was a guy I had met, and his entire job was maintaining a small fleet of race cars for this rather private billionaire. And a Formula One car, a couple of 2-liter cars, like one of the only DTM cars from a particular factory to leave the factory. Really zoomy stuff. And that's all this guy did. And I think he was kind of lonely in his shop, but he was a really cool guy. And he's like, hey, Casey, man, if you have any projects, I got extra space, just call me up. And I'm like, I want to build this car. He's like, give me $300 a month and cool. So here I am building this car, and oftentimes by myself. I was single at the time, and building this thing in the middle of the night with like F1 cars and DTM, and I thought it was cool. It was fun. So I'm working on this turbine engine, and the first thing I come to find out is it's been sitting for 40 years, and all the lubricant in it turned to wax, basically. It's seized. And I'm cleaning it with brake cleaner to break that down, but I'm kind of like heating it up with this kerosene bullet heater, kind of keeping it warm. And I had a pan that was catching extra oil and, you know, diluted whatever and all that, and I was working on something, just a little bit with a torch. And there was one piece of the old grease that lit. And when grease gets hot, it drips. And one little burning piece of grease went down here into this plastic pan underneath the turbine engine that was full of like brake cleaner and diluted oil. And I'm like, it was one of those moments where it was like, and a slow motion drip, like this. And like, oh my God, I'm in here with this Formula One car and all these other things that's gonna burn down with this turbine engine, no! Okay, what do? Okay, I'll smother the flames. It's in a container. So I see a piece of jab rock, which you use on the underside of like Formula One cars and all. It's basically like really nice wood. And I'm like, if I just set it over top, it will create a vacuum and extinguish the flames. So I put it over top, and the plastic got hot enough that it went, and then everything lit. And I'm like running around, I'm like, I don't want to use the fire extinguisher, but I guess I have to. So I used it, everything's fine, all the cars are fine. It really wasn't as bad as it seemed, but I was very surprised. And I looked like Doc Brown from Back to the Future when he would go, ooh. And I felt bad, and the gentleman that was maintaining the shop, he's like, let's work together so that if anything happens, and I bought him new pants, whatever. So I worked on this car, eventually got it running. It was beautiful, it was eccentric, it was ridiculous. All the things you'd want if you're a 20-something single guy. So I decided to start having some fun with this, and I now have this turbine vigilante fictitious car, the only thing that's ever existed. And I'm like, you know, it'd be cool if I put a trailer hitch on it and towed my race car to Mid-Ohio, because that would one-up everybody. So I did. So here I'm driving this thing, and I had my Formula Atlantic car, which was, I think, Rodolfo Lavin's car in the late 90s, and go to Mid-Ohio. And of course, when you pull in, and you're pulling that with that, everybody's like, what? Had a lot of fun. We drove it at lunchtime. I chased around a guy named Jimi Hendrix, believe it or not, in a smart car, shooting the like machine guns at him with blanks and stuff. And they didn't tell me what to do, and I had a PA, and I don't know, I thought it was funny. It was a smart car. I'm like, go back to San Francisco, hippies. So we had fun with that, and of course that was a big hit at the race. But meanwhile, back to Columbus, when you're a single guy driving a car like that, if you go by a club or something, club owner's like, okay, Casey, you bring this car by on a Saturday night, we'll rope it off, you can have an open tab the whole night, let's party. And I'm like, deal. And it was gallery hop night. The whole town comes out for it. It's packed, thousands upon thousands of people, streets, sidewalks, everywhere. And the club owner came out to me and goes, Casey, let's fire off some rounds on your car, man, with the machine guns. And I'm like, I may have a drink in hand, but I'm not stupid. There's 3 cops standing there, and there are like 10,000 people around here. Are you stupid? And he's like, no, man, it's totally cool. It's my club, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but it's my life. And I'm like, I tell you what, you go ask the cops if they say it's cool, we'll do it. But like, they all have to be in, and I'm just like, oh no, I have no part of this. I'm not here. I don't know you. And I look over, and all the cops are like, yeah. Okay. So I walk over, and I remember opening the canopy like this with the guns, and there's these people standing around this girl in like a cocktail dress, and I go, this is gonna be loud. You might wanna not stand there. And it was dark, and there's a big muzzle flash, and I'm like, okay. Muzzle flash like this, and nobody freaks out too bad. I mean, it was loud, but people laughed. They thought it was great. The cops were like, yeah. Apparently people that were about a block down heard this, but of course they didn't know what was going on, and they took it a little more seriously and started finding cover. You know, I tapered down. Everything was reasonable. I was just kind of sitting down, and one of the police officers came up to me and said, hey, when you decide you want to leave for the night, just let me know. We can move the crowd out of the way and make that happen. I said, okay, I think I'm going to go in a little bit. And it was about 2 in the morning. And I get in the car, and I had to let compressors start up, and it starts up, and everything going on like this. And I'm kind of stuck there for a minute. But of course, there's a huge crowd. It's like 5 people deep. I mean, you could park an event door right next to it. No one would care. No one would even look at it. And, you know, I'm punching buttons, getting ready to start and take off, and like looking for the people, like corresponding with the cop. And it was the funniest thing that ever happened, because this kind of trashy looking woman comes up to me, leans in the, and it's very low, I'm way down here. She leans over it like this, so I'm already getting a show. And she goes, well, you go home alone. I'm just like, meanwhile, there's an entire crowd watching this, and this woman like very blatantly trying to pick up or get in the car. And I look at her once, I keep pushing things, and I'm like, because no girls were smart enough to talk to me when they had the chance. Like, I was just kind of in that mood. So she's gonna keep trying, because she thinks she's really gonna do this. And she's like, that doesn't mean you have to. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, honey, Bruce Wayne's flying solo tonight. You know, let's go. And she's still trying, but now I'm not even paying attention to her. I'm like, I really want to get out of here. I'm looking at the cop, the crowd, we're moving. And she's still trying, and finally I just stop. And I'm like, all right, what makes you special enough that I would want to go home with you or take you home? And she is completely taken aback, like, wait a minute, there's somebody who's not shallow in the world that drives a car like this? And she pauses and goes, because I'm attractive. I'm just like, it takes more than that. I remember taking off and going, and of course I went home alone, but I think it was a solid choice. But some of the most fun with that vehicle was, for instance, the drive home at night. And I remember driving 315 home, it's the highway, it's deserted at like 2:30 in the morning, except for, you know, a random traveler, or like 2 or 3 people that are probably coming home from a club and trying really careful to be safe and everything like that, and maybe their passengers have had way too much to drink. It seems kind of fun to maintain a speedy pace at night in this giant black ridiculous car, because it's fun to mess with people. Because those people who have probably had too much to drink or whatnot have partied too hard, you know, if you come flying up beside them like this, and then they look over in astonishment and then just take off, they have got to be thinking to themselves, okay, we are never partying like that again. That was way too much. And it was great fun. And police loved this car. They thought it was the most fun thing ever. They had a great sense of humor. Most of them, all but a couple. And I remember in my hometown, what you'd see in the middle of the night, because it was a small town, there was nothing going on, let's face it. You'd see a police officer at like 3 in the morning, sitting out like in front of this sad little mall, with nothing going on, probably half asleep. And the funniest thing in the world to do was know this, so he doesn't see you. Creep up with the car real slow beside him, like this, stop. Doesn't notice it until the guy looks over and grabs the PA system and goes, I got your back, and then just leave. It was so much fun. And I remember this time in Columbus, it's downtown Columbus, it's very beautiful, it's a clean city, real nice. Downtown by the Court Square. I had this woman with me in a cocktail dress, she was a model, we had done a photo shoot, she asked to be part of the car. I said, sure, why not? I'm new to town, let's have fun. So we're driving around in the car, get off the highway there, and sheriff pulls up next like this, and it's super tinted windows, I can't see. And I remember the cop leaning out the car and going, but I'm the crime fighter. You know what I mean? I'm like, I look at the girl, I'm like, I got this. I got the PA and go, I'm Batman, and just leave. And the cops lose, and he thought it was hilarious. I only made it one more block before there was a state trooper. Now, state troopers are notorious for having far less of a fun personality and being way more business, to the point of almost fault at times. So we're getting pulled over, but now we're in downtown Columbus on High Street. People saw it, and they start coming and flocking to this because this cop has pulled over this guy with this cocktail. I mean, it really looked like what's happening in fiction, you know what I mean? And I'm sitting there, and the cop comes, I'm like, is something the matter? And he goes, I pulled you over because initially I thought you didn't have two headlights, but now I see that's the case, but you don't have any rearview mirrors. Well, I said, well, sir, I have this high definition screen in here and cameras, and that's how I knew you were behind me to pull over. He's like, well, when that's in the Ohio Revised Code, then it's legal. Give me your license. I'm like, okay. The next thing you know, every cop that hears about this, radios. There's bicycle cops showing up, there's police, there's fire to see this scene. They come up to me and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, he's pulling me over for having no rearview mirror. He's like, I wouldn't have pulled you over. And so there's all these people coming, which is funny because the statey who's trying to be cool has now caused this ridiculous scene that has gotten out of control. So it became such a bother to him that he's fine. He's just like, just take your license and get out of here. A lot of fun like that, but actually the car got invited to a fairly prestigious Concours d'Elegance, Alt Park. Of course, it's turbine powered. I didn't really go into that, but they idle at 20,000 RPMs. Like, you can about one up anything. And you have to be mindful too, because the exhaust is dumping out of the side. It had 8-inch exhaust off each side that's got like, I don't know, 1,000-degree Fahrenheit air coming out, a lot, because that's the thrust that moves the car eventually through gears. And at Concourse, Sundays are usually the big show, and before that they have very fancy parties and whatnot. And this particular event was going to be at the local, I think it was like Porsche, Maserati, Ferrari dealership, something like this. They have a beautiful spread of hors d'oeuvres. We just had the greatest time in the parking, talking and laughing about it, showing people how to start up the jet engine and all this. And the police officer whom we made friends with comes up to me and goes, okay, when you go to leave, you do me one favor. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I know he saw me have a couple glasses of wine, but it wasn't out of control or whatever. Like, I feel like he's being stern. He's like, I'm gonna block the street. I want you to get on it. I'm like, can do. So I remember coming over here like this, and it's turbine powered. Thrust is being directed upon the driven, eventually, turbine, and then it has a manually shifted automatic transmission with a torque converter. There's like two different tachometers in this. One for the gas generator that makes the thrust, and then one for the, the power side of everything. And when the power side hits 6 grand, you need to shift, or you're going to overspeed things. Turbo lag is like, that's what this is. It's nothing but turbo lag. So you got a spool boost. So I see the police officer, and I'm like, hard left foot braking like this and spooling this thing up to where it is like really trying to go. And I get in this, let off the brake and hit it. And the best I can say, it reminded me of watching like Empire Strikes Back when I was a kid, and the Millennium Falcon goes to, like hyperspace or whatever it was, and the stars go like this, because it was like, whoosh. And it was like this weird like hand of God was thrusting this supersonic sailboat forward, you know what I mean? And I'm like, shift, like this hyperspace kind of thing. And it was just the greatest thing ever. The police love it, the party loves it, it was good fun. Of course, we had a great time at the Concours on Sunday. We started up for people, did a big talk. I think I made the guy with the old Lotus turbine-powered Indy car jealous across the field, because every time I'd start mine up, he'd have to start his up 5 minutes later because he was missing the crowd. No, that was a very fun time, a time in my life building one of the more ridiculous things I ever did. So one of the old chapters and on to the next.